So I was trying to come up with a video idea for today. I was trying to decide, do I do a comic book video? Do I do a Blu-ray video? And I ultimately settled on doing both.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another comic video that's also a Blu-ray video. We're going to talk about an old format that no longer exists. This is an old format for comics. Blu-rays still exist, but I thought this would be interesting to talk about because I was kind of organizing some stuff, and I came across these and was like, oh yeah, this was a thing for a bit. DC Comics coming with movies. So I thought, let's kind of look at the ones I have, talk about the ones I don't have, and then kind of see where it ended up because I find this idea fascinating. And if you think this topic's interesting, hit the like button, hit subscribe and the notification bell, and hit the hype button if it's available to you. Let's dive into these. I want to kind of talk about the concept behind packing movies with comics and which ones were the most effective at doing so. Alright, so there's an example of what we're talking about today. So for a long time, DC was putting out these movies 2 or 3 times a year that were animated movies that would adapt a famous comic. And then they started doing original stories and they started doing connected universes. And personally, when they started doing the connected universes, I thought the concept started to get lost a little bit. It was neat for a while, but then a lot of stuff ended up just kind of happening off screen. And I didn't enjoy it as much. I kind of liked when the movies were standalone and they were adaptations of famous comics. So, for example, Superman Doomsday, which was the first one, was an adaptation of The Death of Superman. It was a pretty loose adaptation. It wasn't one-to-one. They added a lot of stuff. They, kind of skipped over the Reign of the Superman arc and kind of just did Death and Return of Superman and kind of changed a lot up. And they sort of made it look a little bit like the Superman animated series art style. But for me, these movies were very formative for me as a comic reader because a lot of times I was kind of getting into comics around the time these movies were in their heyday. And so for me, I would I'd watch the movie and then I'd see the bonus features, and the bonus features would talk about the comic even more so than the movie. And so I got a lot of comic history for DC out of that. And those movies were when I was watching them as a teenager, it was like the perfect thing. It was like, they were a little bit more mature, a little bit, darker than like the animated series that I'd already loved, but they weren't, they weren't full on mature adult stuff, but it was kind of like a little bit up. And then it was like, oh, well, what's this comic it's based on? And then I go read it. So DC kind of combined this idea at some point where they started including editions of the comics that came with the Blu-rays. So this has Superman Doomsday on Blu-ray as well as on DVD, and they're just slipped in here in the back. And then inside, of course, you get The Death of Superman, which is, it's the main arc. It's basically what is the standard trade paperback Death of Superman. It includes the teaser pages of Doomsday is Coming. That's, those are usually in the back of other issues of Superman before he appears. Like all of those were teaser pages, and then you get into the core story of Doomsday showing up and Superman fighting him and all that explosive, huge battle that, of course, as the title suggests, ends in the death of Superman, which is right there. And this is the older printing, so it has the 2-page reveal instead of the gatefold. That's more on that in a different video. Too long of a story there. But this was, this was a New 52 time frame as well. You can see they're advertising the New 52 volumes. But I think this was one of the first ones. I didn't go double check. I think this was one of the first ones I got because I didn't have a copy of The Death of Superman, and I didn't have a copy of Superman Doomsday on Blu-ray because I bought the DVD close to when it came out. I actually had this box set. It was the first 3 of the animated movies, and then there were slots for Wonder Woman and Green Lantern. And so I got that. So the first 5 I had just on DVD. So this was like a great way to upgrade to Blu-ray without just doubling up on the same format. And then I got the comic. Now, of course, I own Death of Superman in multiple formats by this point. If you collect Superman comics long enough, you're going to have it in multiple formats. My current format that I enjoy this in is the Superman Triangle Years Omnibus. So it's not really one I'm going to pull out. And then on top of that, I have Superman Doomsday as a bonus disc with the Death and Return of Superman Blu-ray. So I'm still going to keep this because I really kind of like the idea behind it. But it's not something that I pull out very often to take a look at, but that's kind of like why I got this, and I thought it was just a cool release. All right, here's another one, The Dark Knight Returns. This is the 30th anniversary edition of the comic. So this is actually a pretty thick comic to be including here, but it does have all of the Dark Knight Returns by Miller and Mazzucchelli. I didn't have a copy of this. When I first was getting into comics and learning about stuff, sorry, this slipped out. We'll talk about that in a moment. When I was first, looking into comics, of course, like the Dark Knight Returns comes up as like, oh, comics you gotta read. I checked out a copy from the library. Also checked out Dark Knight Strikes Again. Never read Dark Knight Strikes Again. I've read Dark Knight Returns a couple times. I am sort of mixed on the actual comic. I think that it has like a really strong idea of this older Batman in the future. But for me, I find that the stronger version of it is the animated movie. And so I really do like having the comic with the movie. The movies was a lot closer to an adaptation. Now, the cool part, too, is they did the movies as two parts. Part 1 adapted issues 1 and 2, Part 2 adapted issues 3 and 4, and then later on they combined them into one movie experience, which I think is the best way to watch it. You can see that it says Blu-ray and Blu-ray. It's because I moved some discs around. So I had the deluxe edition Blu-ray of the combined films. I had the singles, and then I didn't have the comic, and so I bought this edition to get myself a copy of the comic, and then the fact it didn't include the movie is kind of a bonus thing. The deluxe edition I had didn't have a DVD copy, so I took the DVD copy out of this, because I think this was... Or no, wait, I'm remembering wrong. That's right. Whew! Trying to remember all these things. That's right. So here's the Blu-ray main feature, and here's the Blu-ray special features. What I did was I swapped out this, which was the DVD copy of the movie, with the Blu-ray special features disc, because the Blu-ray special features was loose. There you go. DVD main feature. It was loose in this thing. It was it had a little sticker. I don't know if it has a sticker, actually. I think this was just shrink wrapped and it's just floating in here. And so I didn't want the special features disc to be floating, so I put it in. Because I think for a bit this was the version I was pulling off the shelf. But this is a duplicate for me in a lot of ways. But you can see all the special features. And what's cool about these special features is, like I said, with the Superman Doomsday, was like, this talks about the comic a lot, which I think is awesome. But they had to put all the special features on a separate disc because the actual movie was so much longer. And, it's a pretty lengthy experience. But, yeah, this is kind of... And to this day, I don't have another copy of Dark Knight Returns. I don't feel the need to. This is like a nice hardcover. And a lot of the later editions, like the deluxe edition hardcover, includes Dark Knight Strikes Again, which I never want to own. I do not like that comic. So this was kind of a good way for me to get a nice hardcover edition of Dark Knight Returns, and the fact it's got the movie in the back is a really cool bonus. Here's one that makes total sense, which is Batman Under the Red Hood. This is another case of, oh, hey, look, a promotional card for the Three Jokers that I left in here. I actually should relocate that because I have the Red Hood Deluxe Edition. I should go stick this in my Red Hood Deluxe Edition, actually. I'm going to move that. Anyways, so Under the Red Hood here, this is the storyline of, Batman's once long gone sidekick returns, and this new villain, Red Hood. It's a pretty famous story, and it's pretty iconic for a lot of reasons, and they kind of built a lot off of this. And I think, once again, I find the animated movie to be superior to the original comic, though I still think the original comic is pretty solid. The interesting part here is that it only contains the first part of the comic. When they released it originally, it was in 2 trade paperbacks, and this is only the first trade paperback, so it only comes up to part of the story. It doesn't actually go all the way, which the movie does, but the back half of the movie is not the same as the back half of the comic. They're a little bit different. So I think they also wanted to keep the page count relatively low. So it does only contain like the first chunk of the story, but it's still a good chunk of it. And you can still read this in conjunction with watching the movie and see how the changes were made. And I think that's kind of the whole idea behind these, which I think is cool. I also didn't have Under the Red Hood in Blu-ray. I don't think I do. I might. So I do keep this edition around. So even though I have the deluxe edition, I keep this around for the Blu-ray sake, for now at least. I feel like I might have bought Under the Red Hood on a single Blu-ray. I just can't figure out where it is. But that was kind of also like the nice part with some of these, was to get an upgrade to a movie. Like this one, which is JLA Earth 2 packaged in with Justice League Crisis on 2 Earths, which I had the DVD of because it was before I was switching over to Blu-ray. And so this was a nice way to get the Blu-ray for this. So you got JLA Earth 2. Now this is interesting because Crisis on 2 Earths is kind of just an adaptation of the concept of a crime syndicate, right? The Earth 3 Justice League that are evil and the Justice League have to face it. and it's actually adapted off of a script for a Justice League Unlimited movie that was never made. It doesn't really adapt JLA Earth 2. It takes some elements from it, like Owlman is very much inspired from the Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley take on this, but this is not a direct correlation. This is more like, here's the idea of this storyline, and then here is the movie version of it. That's kind of how it runs. It's not so much a direct one-to-one, but I think it's still pretty good. And I think also, like, the movie takes some inspiration from some more of the Silver Age Earth 3 stuff as well, and that's just kind of it's a little too far, I think, for trying to get people into reading comics. So this one's gonna have a little bit more abstract, but not the most abstract of a pairing of a movie and a book. So this is really abstract. Batman Black and White was an anthology comic. It's a very good anthology comic where you have different artists and different writers doing these one-shot Batman stories. That's kind of the whole concept. It's very anthology-based. You get a different take on these characters, and the only consistent thing is that they're in black and white. Batman Black and White's fantastic. It's an iconic thing. They kind of revisit the concept every once in a while. This is the first volume trade paperback included here in this hardcover edition, and it's very nice. What it includes as a bonus movie is Batman Gotham Knight. Now, Batman Gotham Knight is supposedly in the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy timeline, and it kind of fits. They actually do some good work there, but the idea here was that Batman Gotham Knight is like an Animatrix situation where you have 5 different stories by 5 different anime studios with 5 different directors. And I think that's the correlation, right? Like, this is supposed to be like 5 different anime studios to their take on Batman, and then this is multiple artists doing their take on Batman. And the thing is, none of these stories connect in Batman Black and White, whereas these do have a through line type of story, but it's very interesting. I think it's like the idea of, anthology Batman. Let's pair that with anthology Batman. And that's pretty fun. I picked this up because I didn't have Gotham Knight on Blu-ray. So you can kind of see there's a correlation to the ones I did buy. And then by far the weirdest one, because it's the only one to have a live action movie included, was Batman vs. Superman: The Greatest Battles. So this is an anthology collection that comes with a few different stories. You've got the Superman issue of Hush, where he's controlled by Poison Ivy. You've got this story with Magpie, where Batman and Superman are teaming up to fight her. You get another story, what is this story? You get another story where they're fighting, basically. Then you get some New 52 Justice League, where they're fighting. And then you get some of the Scott Snyder Batman Endgame era run, where, again, Batman and Superman are fighting. And then it kind of ends with, I think it ends with Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, then it has the Dark Knight Returns issue, where Batman and Superman come to blows with each other. I think it's actually 3 and 4 Dark Knight Returns. It's kind of like weird. I think it's like half Dark Knight Returns. Anyways, can you guess what movie this was packed with? Yeah, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. What else would it be? Yeah, this was actually the first way I bought Batman v Superman, because I think this was a Best Buy exclusive, but I thought, let me get a comic with the movie that everybody doesn't like. And while I find the Ultimate Edition to be interesting from an Elseworlds perspective, it's not like the most favorite movie. They did the same thing where there's a third disc and it's plastered over here. So you get theatrical Blu-ray, Ultimate Edition Blu-ray, and then the DVD of the theatrical over there. It's cool to have like an anthology comic. I kind of just have this now as an oddity. This is not anything in here that I don't have in something else that I actually care more about. Oh, there's the list of comics, which would have been better than me just guessing. So it's Batman 612 from Hush. It's Man of Steel 3 from 1986. Superman Batman 78. And then Justice League number 2. And then you got Batman Endgame 1 and 2. So it's Batman 35, 36, New 52. And then Dark Knight 4 for Dark Knight Returns. So, yeah, kind of a weird one. There's some other ones, though, that I didn't get. But let's talk about those. So some of these make total sense. Batman Year One comes packed with Batman Year One. That's a no-brainer. That movie's actually a pretty faithful adaptation, so that's a pretty good one-to-one correlation. Justice League Origin, the first arc of New 52 Justice League, packed with Justice League War, which directly adapted that first arc. That's a good pairing. Justice League Throne of Atlantis with Justice League Throne of Atlantis. Once again, That's just kind of adapting that arc. That one's less one-to-one, but still kind of it's a smart pairing. Superman, Batman, Public Enemies paired with Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. Again, makes total sense. That's the comic it's directly based on. Then you got Wonder Woman, Gods and Mortals packed with Wonder Woman. So the Wonder Woman animated movie is like a modern origin telling of Wonder Woman. It's a whole origin story, and Ares is the villain. And Wonder Woman, Gods and Mortals is the first arc of George Perez's Wonder Woman arc, or his run. And that one also features a new modern origin plus the appearance of Ares. So there's correlation there. They're not like, it's not like that Wonder Woman movie is based on the Gods and Mortals arc, but it's close enough. But that was the other ones they released. They also did a box sets of these, which was kind of neat. First box set had the Death of Superman, Batman Black and White, Batman Year One, JLA Earth 2, Justice League Origin, and Wonder Woman, Gods and Mortals. And then there was a second set that contained Dark Knight Returns, Throne of Atlantis, Public Enemies, and Under the Red Hood. And so that's all of the editions they released, plus the Batman v Superman one was not included in the box sets, but the rest of them were. There was one last release, though. In 2019, there was the Death of Superman comic, given an edition again. And you would think, okay, well, they made a second Death of Superman adaptation movie in the form of Death of Superman, which is a much closer, more faithful adaptation. It was just set in the connected movie universe. So you think that would be what would be packed in with the Death of Superman comic. But nope, it's Reign of the Superman, which is a different comic. That's a different storyline. Reign of the Superman's the sequel to Death of Superman. So it's like, here's the comic, and go watch the movie sequel, which deviates in a lot of ways. That I feel like we lost the plot here. It is nice, though, that there was a 4K edition of the Reign of Superman and Death of Superman bundle. It would have also been nice if it was like the Death of Superman comic, and then it came with the Death and Return of Superman, like the combined Death and Reign movies, but it didn't do that either. And then sadly, we haven't seen any in the last 7 years. Also because we started getting less and less direct comic adaptations in the movies. Like we had Batman Gotham by Gaslight or Superman Red Sun that were comic-based, and Batman Doom Decayed with Gotham. But then we were getting stuff like Green Lantern Beware My Power that was like 5 comics smushed together into one. So you couldn't really do that in the same format. But it was a neat idea, and it's sort of sad that they don't do these anymore, because I think it's kind of cool. Like, could you imagine the new Supergirl movie coming packed in with Woman of Tomorrow? There definitely is options in the future, but yeah, kind of seems like a format that's gone aside. So there we go. That is a look back at the DC graphic novel Blu-ray collections. I don't even know what exactly to call these, because I don't think they had an official title, but yeah, I mean, it was cool. I enjoyed it, and I think it's good for new comic readers. It's like, here's a movie, here's the comic that goes with the movie. Like, I think it's a good pairing. I'm surprised they didn't do this with some of the others. There's definitely some more options. Like, there's so many of the DC anime movies that were just news stories, like Catwoman Hunted, that you couldn't pair it with anything. But there's others, like, you could have put, like, you know, in the same way that Batman Black and White doesn't really correlate to Gotham Knight, you could have put, like, Secret Six's Get Out of Hell Free card arc with the Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, because those were like basically the same story. That's kind of the idea. But yeah, it's a fun look back at this. If you want to see me take a look at other old comic formats or Blu-ray things that never continued, like, let me know, because if this is well received, I could probably come up with some other things that are old formats that don't exist anymore, because I enjoyed talking about this. This was a fun little trip down memory lane to a time when they were doing a lot of cool stuff. But there are so many cool things nowadays, and you want to keep up with that stuff, hit subscribe and the notification bell if you haven't already. Hit the like button while you're down there, and hit the hype button if it's available to you. If you want to continue the conversation, you can join our Discord server in the link below. You can also join as a channel member and get perks like early access to videos. Let's give some special shoutouts to some of our channel members. Special shout out to all of our channel members, including Captain Tears John Troutman, Jake Hambrick, Kustav, Worlds of Wonder, The Vinyl Planet, Common Jojo, Mike Hazel, Platinum Angel, Zabimaro202, Kyle A, 00711, Mo Jazz, Infinite 1985, Light Yagami, and Tim Jackal. Thank you all for your support, viewers and channel members alike. If you so wish, I'm on social media on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Soundout12. You can also find my wonderful graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. And you can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for comic reviews and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, who knows what old format I'll talk about next.